My name is Amanda.
And I'm Kristin.
And we are the Exorcisters. So sit back, relax, and let's get creepy. Welcome to episode 23. And in this episode, we are going to be discussing the 1981 film The Evil Dead, which has quite a cult following.
Yes.
I personally had never seen this. I saw the remake in theaters, and it horrified me. So I have not seen the original until we watched it for this episode. And this is going to be a touchy episode because I know so many people just love this movie. I didn't love this movie, but I didn't dislike this movie. It just didn't really do much for me. And I think the big root of that is it just wasn't something I watched when I was younger or growing up.
The nostalgia wasn't there.
Exactly.
That was my problem,
and
too.
Seeing to me, and this may be an unpopular opinion, I don't really know how the masses felt about the Evil Dead remake. That one just shook me to my core because you know how I am about faces.
And demonic faces.
And demons. And that one was just so gruesome and graphic and horrifying that it has, like, that was one of those where I was in the theater and I'm one of those people you make fun of because in the episode you did with your mom, you were like, those people with the blankets, that was me in the theater.
That was my call out to you because I know that's you.
I was actually with an ex when we went and saw this, and luckily we were the only ones in the theater because we waited. First of all, I'm from a small town, so the movie theater, if you go on a weeknight, it's not very hopping. And it was towards the end of this release in theaters. It had been a month or so, and it was about to transition into dollar movies and Blu-ray. So there wasn't anybody in the theater with us, which was awesome because I was just able to react how I primitively needed to react to it. And it's one of those things where if I'm laying in bed at night, I see two faces. I see the face of the exorcist, Regan McNeil, and I see the girl from the Evil Dead remake. Yeah. This one, though, it was in the early 80s. So, of course, I can't hold the lack of special effects, I suppose, against it. Yeah. And that's not really what, it just didn't, I mean, it was fine for what it was, I thought. It didn't invoke any of those same responses. Yeah. Like,
what I mostly liked was the background of the making of. Like, it was these two friends that loved to do the story so much that they mortgaged homes and land to get this done.
And this was a Sam Raimi.
Yeah, and this was the start of Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
This was their start. I mean, going on later on, he does Spider-Man, and it's like a $350 million picture.
Franchise, yeah.
This was a $350,000 picture. There's quite a difference between that.
Definitely. And there wasn't a huge star-studded cast in this at the time. I mean, you have the actor that plays Ash, known so well for this series. Right. But it wasn't like he brought in, big, like John Travolta and all the big names from the 70s and the 80s. And I will give it that it was an early 80s movie. And so obviously you're not gonna get CGI like you have today. And the special effects are going to be kind of lame. That's just the thing about the 80s. But then when you look at things that were done earlier, like Carrie.
Well, you have psychological stuff earlier.
Yeah.
Also.
Right.
Which we don't have in this either.
Yeah. And then you look at slashers like Nightmare on Elm Street or even Friday the 13th in 1980. It's just a little better. But I think what they were going for was something that was going to take it beyond just someone getting stabbed. So I think it was more difficult for them to do some of these gruesome kills without being...
it was gruesome. Like, there was a lot of fake blood on the screen.
And so it was just, like I said, it's not something that I grew up watching. And so it was just a little flat for me, but I still appreciate it for what it is, what it started, and what it went for. It reached for. So it starts with this entity, demon. We don't really know at this point, if you don't know the background. It's a point of view shot, or it could even be an animal. Like, you don't really know. It's just something that is going through the forest and swampy areas and these ponds very quickly and very ominously.
Which was just two dudes holding ropes from a 2x4, and the camera was on the 2x4, and they're just running through.
Oh, it looks pretty good. It's not like super jumpy or choppy or anything.
It's pretty good.
It cuts to these friends, and they're all in a car headed to a cabin in the woods, which I love. Speaking of cabin in the woods, it's just... So I know that there were cabin movies in the woods. Like for example, in 1980, we had Friday the 13th, which was like a bunch of cabins in the woods. It's just interesting to see some of the stuff that Cabin in the Woods which is your favorite
Yes.
horror movie, took from this and other things like this. It was just...
Absolutely.
And A Cabin in the Woods is an interesting vacation choice, in my opinion. I think that it would be great in an area that's known, but they've never seen this place. It's like off the beaten path. The guy says it could kind of be in bad shape. Like they don't really know what they're getting themselves into. I would have to see, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That sounds scary.
That was a real cabin that they stumbled upon. They didn't even know where they were going to film it, and the crew found that. And it had squatters there for so many years that it was in such bad shape. It had no electricity, which they had to have. Mm-hmm. And they ended up putting, I think, like $10,000 of work into this cabin to make it suitable. They actually lived there throughout the whole filming, and it was so cold in the winters that they were actually burning the furniture in the house, the cast and crew, to have a fire.
It's like a survival story.
Yeah. So that's what I like, is the background of how much these people cared to make this movie.
Yeah, that's true. Ash is navigating for them, and he's your main character.
He looks so high.
Yeah.
Which actually, there's a part of the movie that has been cut out, and they're drinking moonshine. That's why he looks like that.
Got it. And it keeps cutting to the young adults in the car and to something moving rapidly towards them. And something possesses the steering wheel and puts them in the path of an oncoming truck. Like, it just, like, jerks over, and the driver, who is Scotty, can't right the wheel.
And the acting is so great. The woman,
just screaming. One of the friends, and it eventually rights, and he's like, oh, it's your fucking car or whatever to Ash. And one of the friends asks Scotty why they're getting the place so cheap. And he's like, I don't know, I've never seen it. And so, like, if you're getting a too good to be true deal, I think I would leave it. Like, I don't need to go to this isolated cabin in the woods that the owner is just trying to rent out for anything he can, because it's in such bad shape. They get off. This is another thing that I would be like, absolutely not. You can leave me here. I'll walk the fuck back. Because they come upon this bridge that says dangerous. And as they're driving over, planks from this bridge are falling. And one of the fucking tires just goes through.
And the dude's like, it's fine. It's okay. It's not fine.
I would lose my shit. I would not even make it to the cabin because getting there would scare the ever-loving shit out of me. And they just move on. They're like, it's fine. We'll be able to get back across. Like, do you not realize you have to go back across this bridge when you've already lost so many planks?
I think of that when they're on the other side of the bridge also, and they're driving through, and the woods are so close, but there's also a drop-off, literally, I don't know, maybe 4 feet to their left. You don't even know. You can't even see how close that drop-off might be ahead of you.
Right.
You might just drive, no.
Yeah, exactly. Would not even make it to the cabin, luckily. And then they finally get to the cabin, and there's this cute little swing out front, but what it's doing is not cute. It's just repetitively hitting the side of the cabin, and it's very rhythmic. But I was even looking at the trees and stuff, and there wasn't really much wind going on.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay.
And then it just stops.
Yeah. Which is demons.
Yeah.
Scotty gets the keys, and they're just chilling above the door frame. So he just feels around and pulls them down, and they're like old-timey keys on a ring, and there are a couple of them there. And he starts unlocking the door, and they just start, exploring the cabin, as you do. Scotty finds a workroom that's got like chains and saw blades and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, well, maybe somebody's a hobbyist. I don't know. And then it cuts to night. And one of the girls' name is Cheryl, and she is an artist. And since, again, there's not much to do in an isolated cabin, so she is sketching the clock that's on the wall. And it stops, and it starts clanging, and then all this spooky wind just starts blowing through the open window, and something controls her hand, and she draws what looks like a book. With a face. And then right as the wind dies down, this, like, trap door looking, it's a cellar door, just flies open, like,
which happens in my movie Cabin in the Woods also.
Yeah, exactly. And how is she just now noticing this? It's got chains all over, like, you're just like, oh my god, there's a door here. And then it cuts to them all just eating dinner together, like there wasn't just some crazy wind that somehow blew the floor open. And they're also drinking, and then it flies open again in front of everybody. Cellar door flies open, and one of them is smart and says that they should close it up. Like, don't go down there. And they all are kind of in agreement that they hear something down there. And so my first indication would be put whatever the heaviest thing is in this whole cabin on top of that, chain it shut.
Yep.
Like,
and
I don't
leave in the morning.
I don't know what's down there. I don't want to know what's down there because even if it is an animal, it could be dangerous. I mean, I think they're in Michigan. I saw one of them wearing a Michigan sweatshirt, like for the college. So I don't know if they were in Michigan.
I think that's where Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi were from.
So it may make sense.
Because I know they filmed pieces there, but I don't know. I don't know where
I don't
this
think it really ever
supposed to
says.
be.
I just know one of them had a Michigan
I know the
sweatshirt
cabin
on.
is actually in North Carolina.
Got it. And so but really in any forested area, whatever region of the country, there are bobcats. There are, I mean, even raccoons will lose their shit on you, even if it's a little one. There are bears in some parts of...
Or the fact that there were squatters there, like in real life. So
Yeah.
who knows what's down in that basement.
Right. And they all know that something's down there, so Scotty decides to go down.
Oh, of course. I mean, that's what you have to do in a horror movie.
Right.
You gotta go check it out.
And Ash, so going into this, I didn't really know much about the background of this movie. All I knew was that in the second one, Ash is kind of this, like, as far as like
badass.
And he's not in this movie, which was interesting to me because I thought that he was going to be the big burly dude that stepped up and went and checked out all this stuff, but he's like, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And Ash calls down to him after Scotty's been there for a while, and Scotty doesn't answer. And Ash tells Linda, which is his girlfriend, to get him a flashlight, and of course they only brought one, and Scotty took it, so he has to go down with a lantern. And Ash goes down into the cellar, and Scotty is nowhere to be found at first. And there's like nasty, thick stuff. You don't really see it very well other than it's really thick as far as color goes. It kind of looks black, but it's just nasty. And it's just dripping off the pipes from the ceiling. And then there's this door in front of him where you can assume that Scotty probably is. And Ash opens it, and of course Scotty jumps out at him to scare him. He's like, boo. And I would like smack the shit out of in this room, there is a ripped up Hills Have Eyes poster.
Yep.
They find a shotgun, and Ash finds the old book that something possessed Cheryl to draw. Possessed, get it?
Get it?
Get it. And they open it, of course. And it's a lot of like skulls and anatomical drawings of bodies. And they also find, it was a dagger, I believe. I remember seeing a skull on it. Scotty's like the Joker. Like, he's the comedic relief, but it's like that, I hate to say it, but it's like that cheesy, bad acting, like 80s, like poor place, just annoying one-liner joke kind of things. And it just doesn't land well, in my opinion. But that's pretty similar to how I would say like a B-movie horror would be.
Exactly.
But this, I don't think, is really considered a B horror movie. It's got like a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, 95 or something.
To me.
Yeah, so that's interesting too. And of course, there's the 80s. I love 80s lightning, like in Poltergeist too, outside, and so it's getting all stormy and spooky. And Scotty found a tape downstairs, and he plays it, and it's someone that has been doing excavation in the mountains, and him and his wife moved to the cabin to get away. He says the book is bound in human flesh and inked with human blood, and that would be all I needed to hear.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
turn that shit off. It talks about the book dealing with a demon and demons, and the demons may be recalled by incantations by the passages in the book, and they may possess the living. And Scotty is just taunting all of them. He's like egging it on, and Cheryl is not having it. Like, she's already had some sort of experience here, and I don't blame her. I would be so freaked out at that point. I would want to leave because of that. If something took control over any part of my body, I would be like, oh, hell no, absolutely not. But she doesn't tell them what happened. She just kind of moves on until this. And so a window breaks out because a tree limb comes through it as Cheryl is yelling, shut it off, and just screaming. And then she ends up just running out of the room. And then everyone kind of disperses because there's been a big upset in this spooky tape. And Ash and Linda decide to stay up together and just listen to the storm. And as they're sitting there, Linda decides she's going to go check on Cheryl to make sure that she's okay. While she's gone, Ash gets out what looks like a jewelry. At first, I thought it was a ring box and he was going to propose.
Yeah.
But it's a gift to surprise Linda. And he puts it on this is so stupid. He puts it on his lap, and then she comes back. She's been gone for like 2 seconds. and he acts like he's asleep, and she pulls it out, and I was like, is that a fucking monocle? What? It's like
a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
It had, I was reading up on it, it had a lot more purpose on more length of film, but they had to cut a lot of it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
It was supposed to be, he was supposed to use the magnifying glass to burn the Necronomicon book. That's what was supposed to happen. But then Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell were like, that's kind of stupid. So
That's interesting because, you know, I knew that it was significant, especially because at the cutting ahead, but the end of the book, it becomes something he reaches for and uses and is holding at the end, which I'm like, okay, well, it was Linda's and she's gone.
That's literally those two trying to make it important, because it was so important for them to create that footage. They had to have some reason for him to have that fucking magnifying glass.
So he used it as like a fishing, like,
yes.
Well, it looked like a monocle, but it's a necklace, and she tells him she'll never take it off. And they start like making out, and then you can see something, it cuts to this entity's point of view as watching them all from outside the windows, and it's like moving from window to window, and then it sees Cheryl, and Cheryl is alone because there are 3 women, 2 men, and 2 of the women have men, and Cheryl is the outlier here. She's that 5th wheel, if you will. And she goes to the window and hears something outside, and this bitch goes outside.
It's a horror movie. She has to.
I know. And again, this is like, it's not early horror, because the horror has been around since like the 1910s or the teens rather.
But it's that slasher horror.
Yeah, that
where they hear some noise and
stereotypical.
I gotta go outside and get killed. I mean, that's what you gotta do.
Right. And she is that bitch.
Yeah.
She's like, is anybody out there? And I wrote, bitch, shush. Someone ask for it to come get you. She wanders off into the forest alone. Okay, so first of all, let's just think about it like this. This is a fucking forest that is isolated, that we've already established has swamps, cliffs, shady bridges. So maybe if you're gonna go out and be a dumb bitch, bring another dumb bitch with you. Safety in numbers, right? Yeah. But no, she just goes out there alone, and she's like, I know somebody's out there. I heard you in the cellar. Okay, so first of all, you were scared of what was in the cellar to begin with, and now you're just like coming to its comfort zone? No.
No.
Absolutely not. And something in that point of view is barreling towards her. It's literally knocking down trees. Did they really knock down trees?
I don't know. I didn't read anything about that part.
I better not knock down trees.
I don't know.
Evil Dead, on its own, ruined it. All deforestation was because of these.
Oh my God.
And then these vines and branches start wrapping her up and holding her down, and it rips her clothes, and we have to get some boobage. This is our boobage that we get in this movie.
But we don't really, actually.
It's one boob.
She covers herself pretty good,
yeah.
And then it rips away, but you see it for like half a second.
Yeah, it's not very long, but I was like, there's the boob.
I was kind of impressive for something so gory that you don't really...
Yeah, because I just assumed that since there are 2 couples here, that it would be a little bit more sexual in nature, but they really cut to the demon gore stuff pretty quickly, and they don't dwell on that, which I appreciate. But we do get a little bit here. And
well, we got a little bit before when it was looking at windows too.
Yeah, that's true. She takes her shirt off. Yeah, but it wasn't like, again, like this. It was not something it dwelled on. It was just like, these are, first of all, taking your shirt off when you're getting ready for bed is like a normal thing to do.
It's not like we're gonna have this intense sex moment.
Yeah, it was just like seeing a female body, and that was it. Which, whatever. And then it starts like going up her leg because it's holding her down, and it's disturbing in the way the remake is. Obviously the remake took from this, and it's just, she gets the branches off of her eventually after it crawls up her legs and in between her legs, and
the tree rapes her. Okay.
Yes. And she gets the branches off of her and starts taking off running.
I just wanted to bring up, I just watched the director commentary of Cabin in the Woods, and they actually had he didn't want to call it a rapey tree, but it's a molesting tree. Which, come on, that definitely came from Evil Dead, that idea.
Of course, yeah.
So, that's pretty cool. Another nod to older cabin films.
Yep. And then, in typical slasher fashion, there is a running and screaming scene.
Oh, absolutely.
Where she falls down way too much. At first, she does good. It's like right when she gets in view of the cabin, she just starts getting up and falling over and over and over. And then she finally gets to the door, and the door is locked. And she's beating on the door and screaming. This is a small cabin. Nobody hears her.
There's no other sounds around.
Nobody hears you screaming for help. Your friends are shitty. They're not paying attention. And she remembers, of course, that the keys are up on the door frame, and it's advancing on her. So it keeps switching to this point of view of it getting closer and closer. And right before it gets to her, she closes the door, and it kind of slinks back a little bit. Cheryl tells them the woods are alive and she wants to leave this place immediately. And Cheryl is Ash's sister. Mm-hmm. So Ash says he'll take her to town to stay. Ashley, yeah.
Which is so Gone with the Wind.
I was about to say, you don't hear that for a male name very often, but I've heard it in this and I've heard it in Gone with the Wind. Mm-hmm. And I think that's it. So Ash says he'll take her to town to stay the night. And they go outside. And of course, the car won't start at first. Cheryl says it won't let them leave. She's like convinced that this is like a thing that
the fucking starts.
Yeah, the force won't let them leave, and then the car starts. And the other three just go back inside. And there is so much fog machine in this movie. Mm-hmm. The woods are so smoky, and I'm like, it was a little too much fog for me, but I get they were going for that type of ambiance. So they get going, and then they get to the bridge, and ain't no bridge anymore. So Ash gets out to kind of look around and see what's going on. And then Cheryl goes looking for him after a few minutes, of course. And she runs I don't know. I would be so scared to be alone. I think I would just rather stay in the car alone.
Absolutely. I would not get out of that fucking car.
I wouldn't go back into the forest, especially I would act way more traumatized than her with everything that just happened. Yeah. But she doesn't find him. And so she's running around for a little bit and she runs back to the car and they essentially run into each other. And the bridge is down and they figure that out and she's just losing her shit. And she's like, see, it's not going to let us leave. They go back to the cabin and they play the tape again. The man says his wife has become a demon and the only way to stop it is bodily dismemberment. And the other two girls, Linda and Shelley are their names, are playing like guess my card. And one girl, I think
like
is
Ghostbusters.
Yeah, one girl is asking Linda, what is it? And then she gets it wrong every single time. But the girl's like, oh my God, you got it right.
I'm amazing.
But then this part actually spooked me. I was like, oh shit. Because you just hear Cheryl off to the side start saying every single card that's coming up. And then she gets possessed as fuck and she just like levitates into the air and starts saying, you will all die one by one like the others before you. And her eyes and face are all changed, and of course she has a spooky voice and her face is all cut up and all this stuff. And so then there starts to be a altercation between all of them, and she gets a pencil and she just stabs it right through,
which is horrible,
Linda's Achilles. What is with all they know that's going to make people go,
oh, part that you can't protect, and it's like
the eyes, the Achilles, like,
and you have to have it. You can't run away from something if you don't have your ankle.
Yeah, right. There's no way. And so poor Linda, she gets back up and she starts laughing maniacally, of course, and advancing on Ash with the pencil. And then Scotty decks her with the butt of an axe and traps her in the cellar.
I love that.
Yeah. And so then she starts, join us. And that's the big thing that this demon keeps saying, join us, over and over. And then they're all sitting around and the demon is peeking through the cellar door. And Shelley, I think it's Shelley or Linda, but I think Linda's pretty out of it at this point, so I think it's Shelley, just starts yelling, her eyes, for God's sake, what happened to her eyes? And she's making these horrible groaning, laughing sounds. And Shelley tells Scott she thinks something else is still in the woods. And okay, so I know I keep talking about the remake, but we'll do it eventually and go through it. But one thing that really bothers me about this movie and the remake, and I say bothers me in like a scares me way, is the way that the demon peers through the cellar door. Like it's just a little slit that she can see out of, and it bothers me. Again, it's just one of those things that I see at night when I can't sleep, is something just peering at me and just seeing their eyes. It really gets to me. So even on this one, where of course it's not quite as creepy, just seeing a fucked up demon face.
Yeah, they're not as scary, but I figured the demon faces might get you a little bit.
Yeah, it wasn't one of those that stayed with me, like when I went to sleep at night. This one wasn't, but the remake definitely still is. I say this movie was kind of flat for me, but it did do something for that part of what I like watching, but don't like watching. Yeah. It's like The Grudge for you. Like, it's good, but it just sticks with you.
Yeah. The only one that actually creeped me out a little bit was Ash's girlfriend, like the porcelain doll type.
Yeah, that was so good. Yeah. And they listened to this tape right before she started, she's down there doing all their shit. So it planted that this is how you get rid of the demon. So at least they have that. It's kind of like they have an instruction manual, which a lot of people in horror don't get. It's like all guesswork. But this guy on this tape, who I wonder if was the guy that rented them the cabin, or if you don't know what happened to him. So maybe he's the owner and he is like, I'm either going to make some money on this, or he knows that, you don't really know why. But maybe it's just willed down to some poor old dude doesn't know what to do with it. So he rented it out to a couple college kids. I don't know. Also, every time they laughed and it started playing, I have a subwoofer that touches my couch and it had some good sound. And I was like, ooh. So turn the bass up when you watch this movie because it made it better. And then something breaks through the window and gets Shelly. And when I say got Shelly, I mean possesses Shelly. And so she disappears and they're all looking for her after all this commotion. And Scott goes into the bathroom and pulls back the shower curtain and nothing is there. But as soon as he turns around, a possessed Shelly is digging her nails into him and ripping off flesh. And he comes out into the living room with her on top of his shoulders. And he starts burning her in the fireplace initially, but he ends up saving her because this is his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And he should have just left her in the fire because Cheryl is under the door, laughing and really orchestrating. When I say Cheryl, it's Demon Cheryl, but Orcus kind of pulling the strings on all this. And Shelley pushes Scott's face, tries to push it into the fireplace. But before he gets burned, he's yelling at Ash, and Ash is just watching with an axe and watches Shelley chew her own hand off. Isn't that what happened? She chews her own hand off. And Ash is again, this is when I realized Ash is not the character that I thought he was going to be based on just what I had heard, I guess, specifically about the second one. He freezes a lot in this movie because he just can't process what he's seeing, and it's just so...
What I've heard about... I have not seen the second one. This is only my second viewing ever of this movie, but what I've heard of the second one is it's basically Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, their reimagination of the first one. So I think it's going to be them making Ash better.
Got it.
That's what it is. Not quite sure.
We'll find out. It's on the schedule for next year. We did a lot of sequels next year that we did the first ones of this year. So we're going to find out. Don't ruin it for us. So they finally stab her and she seems to die. But as Scotty walks by her, she gets up. I feel like if you know that dismemberment is going to be the key here, just start chopping a head off, immediately. Scotty yells at Ash to hit her with the axe, but again, he freezes up, and Scotty then starts dismembering her, and Ash can't watch. And the body parts are just twitching on the ground, and he lays the axe down next to the body. I think I still wouldn't lay the axe down at all. That's one of those things in horror movies where I wish, just keep the weapon with you. Like in Halloween. Don't drop the knife. Pick it up. Keep it with you.
Exactly.
Or, don't drop the axe or don't put your gun down or whatever. Just if you're ever in a situation, don't ever assume they're dead, even if they look real dead. Because they're never dead.
Which I know I shouldn't be bringing up, but that's why I like Cabin in the Woods. Because they actually give you an answer to that.
Exactly.
On why they're dropping their weapons.
Yeah. And Scott says they should leave. And, she had something stabbed through her Achilles, and so she's sleeping. Her body's just we're not doing this. And Scotty knows that she's in there laying down, and he says, we'll just leave her if we have to and come back for her. And Ash is like, no, we're not going to leave Linda.
Her with these demons.
Yeah. And Scott says he doesn't care. She's your girlfriend. You take care of her. It's
he took care of his girlfriend. He jumped her to bits, so, that's fair.
Cheryl's down there laughing and says, soon all of you will be like me. And Ash goes to check on Linda. And she's sleeping somehow. I'm assuming she's in shock. And he pulls the covers up and looks at her foot. And it's a hole. And it starts turning black and veiny and spreading really quickly. And she just pops up demony and starts laughing. And this cackle is a very high pitched. I can't even do it. Because, I probably... Yeah, exactly. I was about to say, I'll just start coughing because I have a chest cold or something, but it's so...
girly and high-pitched.
Yeah, like a child almost.
Exactly. She's like a porcelain doll.
Exactly. And he backs up towards the door, and Scotty has gotten all fucked up at this point, saying, Cheryl, he's real bloody. Like, I don't know if I missed something because I was taking notes, but he just got real fucked up, I'm assuming.
It's just what his girlfriend did.
Oh, okay. He's just reeling now and dealing with the injuries.
Dying, like he's getting possessed too. So.
Yeah. And he says, Cheryl was right. It's not going to let us leave. And Scotty says that there's a trail around the bridge, but the trees won't let them leave. The woods are alive. The demons, which at this point are Cheryl and Linda, are just laughing. And Scotty starts throwing up blood, and Ash goes over to Linda and slaps her across the face.
Like a bunch of times.
And she just keeps laughing.
And she's just sitting in the doorway, just like cross-legged, just sitting there, not doing anything really creepy
she's just laughing and
menacing.
Her head's going back and forth a little bit, laughing, and
that was the best part.
Yeah. Demon Cheryl says, kill her if you can, lover boy, because he's so soft and sweet. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, who could kill their loved one? Mm-hmm. It's like all these movies where your loved one gets possessed or something, and you can't have, even if it's not them, it still looks like them to an extent, you know. And she's just laughing and laughing, and he points the shotgun at her. And it cuts back to Linda's real face. So the demon, you know, lets her look like herself, and she just says, Ash, help me, please. And he falls for it, and he embraces her. And Cheryl's demon voice from the cellar comes back and tells Ash she's okay now. Unlock the chain and let her out. So it did the same thing to Cheryl. It's a demon, but it lets Cheryl's natural voice come out and say, it's over now. It's okay. You can let me out of the cellar. And Ash is weak. And Ash falls to his knees and kneels down, and he's like, Cheryl? And he gets the keys out of his pocket like a dumbass, and he peeks into the crack of the cellar door, and of course a hand breaks through and grabs his neck. And Linda is back to Demon Linda and giggling and yelling, we're gonna get you. And he drags Linda outside as she's yelling, useless, useless, and time will come for you. And he just leaves her outside. Like, you had something stabbed through your foot, even if you are a demon, like, I'm just gonna leave you outside. But I'm pretty sure if it was motivated enough, which you see later, it'll just stand up. It doesn't care. And then he just comes back inside, and he tries to tend to Scotty and gives him some water. And of course, Linda gets back in, and she stabs him, and she's got this like dagger, and she's just licking the blood off the blade, which is not as bad as what happened in the remake. And they have, like, of course, a little altercation, and he gets too close to the cellar as Linda is advancing on him, and Cheryl grabs his ankle.
She couldn't see him, by the way. Those contact lenses were so thick. They were saying that it's like looking through Tupperware. Ooh. And she literally couldn't see him when they were doing that scene.
I can't imagine knowing what I know about eyes and contact lenses. Like, the modern technology colored contact lenses, like prescription ones, are so uncomfortable.
They could only wear those contacts, I think it was like 20 minutes at a time, and then they had to let their eyes breathe.
I'm sure they weren't getting any oxygen to their eyes at all, so hopefully they didn't fuck up their corneas from filming this.
At least they knew that back then, and they let their eyes breathe for a while. I was kind of impressed hearing that.
That's true. He eventually is able to stab Linda, and I know it's not, and it's supposed to be kind of like Reagan-esque, but she throws up milk. It's like this white liquid
that was supposed to be so that they wouldn't get such a high censorship. So that it wouldn't be, I mean, it's really gory. There's a lot of blood anyway, but so it wouldn't be so much blood. Let's use some milk.
Yeah.
It was 2%.
I knew it was milk. I don't know what it was. It was just supposed to be some sort of vomit or projectile, but I was like, that's fucking milk. Which is, you know how I feel about milk, just drinking it. No. Did they just put it in their mouth and just like spit it?
I don't know.
Just take a swig real quick. He drags Linda's body downstairs and chains it to a board, and he grabs a chainsaw to dismember her. But he looks at the necklace that he just gave her, which is just perfectly sitting on her chest. Mm-hmm. Hasn't moved. It's not behind her. It's not like tangled up.
Because that's totally how it works in real life.
Right. You think he's, and he stops. And it's like you think, like, no, do it. But I don't think not wanting to kill your girlfriend is weak. I just think that's humanity, And he just lays his head down over her body and just starts sobbing and decides to take her outside to bury her. And then the demon Cheryl starts getting all excited again, and you can see Linda open her demony eyes and look at Ash while he's digging a grave for her.
And then we're doing that same thing again that we did with the little magnifying glass in the beginning. Mm-hmm. He's looking and then she's looking, but they're not looking at each other. And
And Cheryl looks like she's about to get out. She's made some good progress on opening that cellar door up. It's like wider and wider and wider, and she's getting close. So Ash finally finishes his shallow little grave and stops digging and kneels down to pick her up, and he lays her in the grave. Ash starts covering her up with dirt, and he buries her. And he sees that her necklace has been taken off, and he bends down to grab it, and of course she busts out of the ground and shreds his leg. It looks like almost to the bone, just with her nails.
Right?
Like it's just cake, like easy to go through, like it's nothing. Like fondant, I guess, is what I'm trying to explain there. And she throws up more milk. And he beats her with like a wooden beam of some sort.
Styrofoam, but
yeah, it looked like it was too like cut to be just like a random branch he found, but it looked like it was supposed to be like some sort of like 2x4 beam or something. And then he drops her head off with a shovel, but the body is still trying to kill him while the head's separated over here laughing.
Which was actually their little they were scared that with the trees they were going to get people mad at them because they're raping a woman, but this was their nod to, look, a woman can do it to a man too. I'm like, oh my god, that's so fucking weird, but okay, go horror, I guess.
Yeah. He finally gimps back to the house, and he sees that Cheryl has gotten out. A bedroom door opens on its own, and the natural thing to do is go in there. And he grabs the shotgun and focuses on a door that's moving back and forth, like it's either a door to another room or a closet or something like that, just doing that same rhythm that the swing was doing in the beginning. And then Cheryl, of course, pops up in the window next to him, and he goes to close the front door, but it's stuck. And so Cheryl's racing around the front to try to get to the front door, and he's racing to the front door to try to close it before she can get in. And her hand gets through, and he beats it, and she's not able to get in. And as he closes the back door, he immediately realizes he also has to run to the back door. So that's good. At least he wasn't like, oh, okay, safe. And then it's like, no, there's a whole other door back there.
It's a tiny cabin. Why does it even have 2 doors? But whatever.
Yeah. Then he immediately realizes he has to go into the cellar to get a box of shells. So he just grabs this shotgun that is not loaded. First of all, when he goes in to investigate that door that opened, he grabs the shotgun, knowing full well that it's not loaded. So I guess he's just going to beat somebody with it, which they're heavy. You can do some damage with the butt of a shotgun. And he goes down into the cellar and sees the thick stuff running off the pipes is blood. Corn syrup, maybe? Is that what makes most blood in horror movies?
Yeah, it is.
And he sees the blood running from the pipes, and he's real spooked. And then the pipe bursts on him, and he just gets blood or whatever this is that's trying to look like blood. And it's like, is it real blood, or is the demon just trying to get in his head?
Fucking with him?
Yeah. And blood is pouring from the electrical outlets into light bulbs down the walls. It's just running. I love blood imagery. Like, I love things that don't bleeding. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I just think it's spooky. And a record starts playing music, and something starts a projector in his face, and it also starts running red with blood. And a voice just starts taunting him, "We're gonna get you." And various voices start talking to him in his friends' voices and things that they've previously said and stuff like that. He ends up getting the shells, and he starts walking upstairs from an angle that's like you're looking up at him from the splits in the stairs, and you think that something's gonna come up from there and get him, but it doesn't. And then the clock chimes, and then you hear pulse sounds, and I cannot stand heartbeat sounds. They gross me out. I don't know why, but they just give me goosebumps.
I think that's a great connection between you and I, because the sounds of a pulse freak you out. The feel of a pulse freaks me out.
Really?
I can't hold hands with someone if I feel your pulse. No.
See, I can't stand listening to them.
Getting blood pressure taken and feeling that.
Monitors don't bother me. Like beep beep, like that doesn't bother me. But actually hearing that, like, ugh, it just really irks me and makes me feel sick to my stomach. I don't know why. He's walking around the house, all sketched out, of course, and the shutters start opening and closing quickly on their own, and he reaches into a mirror, and it turns into water, and he screams.
He freaks the fuck out.
How scary would it be to be... You're completely alone at this point, because Scotty's dead, everyone else is dead, or a demon trying to get you, and so you're just completely alone, and then you just start, like, almost hallucinating things. I think one of the scariest things to me would be to not know what's real and what's fake. Like... that just, how do you defend yourself when you don't know what dimension you're in, or if you're just going crazy or what?
I think that's what he thinks when he touches that mirror. He's like, I'm going fucking insane.
Yeah. And I would also not want to be, if I was going to die, I would not want to go last.
Dude.
I would not want to be the one that has seen all of this happen and then just be totally alone. Yeah, like first or like second. Mm-hmm. First, preferably, because you don't have to see all of this happen. But I definitely would not want to be last. I think it would just be too much, and I wouldn't even have it in me to fight back. Because you've seen it overtake and overpower everyone else in front of you. What makes you think you're going to be different? And what, as humans, can we really do against a demon? Like,
nothing.
Burn the book, I guess.
Either I hope I'm first, or I'd probably kill myself.
Yeah. He hears someone walking on the floor above him. And he pulls Linda's necklace out of his pocket, and he says her name, just says Linda one time. And the noises that he's been hearing and the clocks stop. And then these hands crash through the door behind him, yelling, "Join us." So they just come straight through the door. And he shoots Cheryl's face through the door, and then Scotty's body pops up behind him, and they start fighting. The book gets thrown near the fire. And so that happens as they're having this altercation. And then it shows Ash gouging out Demon Scotty's eyes with his thumbs, which they looked like soft little grapes. Like, I wonder if it's that easy. I mean, eyes are pretty soft when you, this is going to be gross, but like when, I mean, we work in optometry, and I know you're on the billing side, but I do a lot in clinic when I'm taking pressures and I'm actually doing like a tonometry reading, which is where you can see the cornea give. So it's not, I'm sorry. I know you hate
this conversation so much. I'm literally backing away from the mic and her right now.
I know you hate eyes, but like you can see, like, or if you're doing like a hard contact lens insertion or something, you can see the eye give in its socket a little bit.
Why do you want me to vomit?
Oh, it's just interesting to me. I would just wonder how easy it is to gouge somebody's eye out. That's all.
You fucking psycho.
But he made it look like they were just little unskinned grapes, you know, like you could just.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry.
Are we done with the eyes now?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So then he grabs a pointy branch out of his leg that he's just had chilling in his leg. I think he pulled it out of Scotty's leg.
And it's just like a keg. He just starts bleeding out from all these little orifices.
Yep. And Ash sees the book is starting to burn, and it's starting to affect them a little bit. And Cheryl Demon gets in and knocks him down, and as he's trying to get to the book to throw the whole thing in the fire instead of just like a corner of it, because it's not actually in the fire. And as he's crawling towards it, Scotty grabs him, and Cheryl Demon grabs a fire poker. So you've got two demons versus you just crawling on the floor. Your odds are not very good. But this is the one thing that bothered me in this movie more than anything else. And it probably shouldn't, but it just, like, I was like, this could have been over and done with. If you're a demon, this is it. This is your shtick right here. Like, this is going to be it. Cheryl starts beating him with the flat side of the sharp fire poker. And I mean, Scotty's like gnawing on his leg and it's all this stuff, but he gets the book. The demons are, I mean, okay, so first of all, before we move forward, why not just stab the pointy end of the fire poker like they do in many movies, which makes sense, through him?
And then it would be done.
And you wouldn't have to fight this anymore. And he is trying to get this book by throwing the part of the necklace that he got Linda at it and trying to reel it towards him. He's like fishing for it, which I don't know how he thinks that's going to work, but it does. I mean, he gets it and he pulls it towards him and he throws the book in the fire and the demons start smoking. And I said,
claymation melting.
Yes, I said it looks like stop motion.
It is.
I said they start leaking laundry detergent because it's like blue liquid. And they start falling apart and disintegrating. And that's when I said it looks like stop motion. But I guess it's clay melting, which makes sense, which is exactly what it looks like. And in my notes, I went back to the poker thing, but I'll just let that go for now. It's like you wouldn't be disintegrating if you had just stabbed him with a poker. There's like nasty vomit looking stuff coming out of the arm of Scotty's sleeve and like just all this oozing and bugs and demon hands are bursting out of their bodies, and then they just continue to disintegrate, and you hear "join us" one last time, and then it's daylight. The sun comes up and he's holding Linda's necklace in his hand, and there's this nice uplifting music. He walks outside and starts walking to the car, and then the thing moving through the forest it's doing the point of view thing again, so you can see it moving towards him. And it ends with Ash screaming as it descends on him. And that's it. I did notice that the credits, honestly, just thinking of early 80s horror, with the level of special effects being 80s special effects, which is fine, I really wouldn't think it was that low budget. But there weren't a lot of cast and crew in the credits, and that's what really kind of tips you off that it was a lower budget film and probably self-funded, I would assume, by Sam Raimi and Bruce. Yeah. So
Bruce Campbell mainly. He ended up
funded
being the producer basically because he mortgaged like his house and stuff for this movie.
That's a lot of dedication.
His best friend. Yeah.
I mean, it paid off for both of them. They both are big names, and they've done a lot of stuff. And I like seeing, Sam Raimi come out with new stuff. I think his stuff is always interesting, and a lot of it is.
He's got a new movie come out this year.
Does he? Which one is it?
Crawl.
Oh, really? Yeah, we're going to see that, right? So, I mean, I liked this movie. It was, like I said, I watched it and I didn't get super excited about any of it, but I didn't think it was bad for what it was. I just didn't have a lot to really say about it either way. It is what it is. I think that it inspired what, in my opinion, is a really good remake and a really scary premise. And I think it's different. For the time, it was different than, a different concept of demons going from person to person to person to person and claiming them.
Yeah, and the Cabin in the Woods thing was still new at that point. We had basically only had Friday the 13th and only like one, maybe two movies at that point.
Yeah.
So it wasn't used and abused, so that was really cool.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty original. I would say very original for the time.
Absolutely.
And it sparked a lot of, it inspired a lot of films and different pieces and places that things took from it. So I appreciate it in that sense. I would maybe watch this again come October when I'm just trying to fill my entire schedule with nothing but scary every single day and spooky. It's probably not something where if I want a good scare, I'll reach for it. It's probably not something that if I want nostalgia, I'll reach for it because I don't have that going for it either. But it's not bad. I'd say for me, it'd be like a middle of the road, like 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I was thinking probably 2 because honestly I was pretty bored watching it. I kind of started nodding off, which made me sad because I don't have that nostalgia to go on. But because of the background of it, I think I'd probably up that to a 3 also. I'm really hoping that Evil Dead 2, because people love Evil Dead 2 even more than they love Evil Dead. So I'm super hoping that I love Evil Dead 2 next year.
Is the Evil Dead 2 Army of Darkness?
No, that's 3.
That's 3. Which one is 2?
2 is just Evil Dead 2.
Oh, it's just the sequel. Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that one as well because, again, I think this was pretty innovative for the time, and I really appreciate what it did for movies going forward and what they took from that, and for horror fans in general. I could see why people love this movie so much. It just didn't do that for me.
Yeah.
But I don't think it is a bad movie. It just, some horror movies hit the mark for me and some don't, whether I've seen them a million times or this, or what. I don't really also discriminate against what era it's from and how cheesy it is. That's just the way things were.
Yeah. I almost feel let down that I don't get to be a part of it. Like, I wish I could be a part of that cult following and love it so much, but I don't.
Yeah. Well, and that's just the way it goes, Thank you for joining us for this episode. Before I wrap up by giving social medias, we would like to ask, I know we ask for something different almost every episode, if you have ever had any near-death experiences and you remember some sort of outer body experience or something that you may have feel like you saw a glimpse of the other side or maybe just weird hallucinations or anything like that.
I know I had one.
Yeah, comas, concussion, I mean, just anything, or if you got sick, so sick that you were close to death or died and came back, let us know. We've got something really cool planned for this one coming up that I think that you all will really enjoy. I said you all instead of y'all, and I don't know who I am anymore. But yeah, please let us know. Email us at theexorcisters@gmail.com. You can also hit us up on Facebook and Instagram at The Exorcisters Podcast. Our Twitter is at The Exorcisters. We also have a website that I forget to mention all the time. It is www.exorcisters.com. We have a blog with some of the stories that we've written, as well as the podcast on there, if you're not a fan of any of the apps that we are on.
And next time, we will make you one of us. Till then, stay creepy.